Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about a case that really shook the true crime world.
It really did.
The Golden State Killer.
Yeah.
Now, this guy, he went by a few other names, too. The East Area Rapist and the Visalia Ransacker.
Right.
He was active in California in the 70s and the 80s. We're going to be looking at excerpts from Michelle McNamara's book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Great book.
It really is. And she really chronicles her search for this criminal.
It's amazing how she wasn't, like a detective or anything. She was a writer.
Right.
But she got so obsessed with this case. And she actually, bought the Golden State Killer's stolen cufflinks online.
Okay, now that's dedication to a case.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine that. You're so driven to solve a case, you're buying evidence off the black market.
That's incredible.
But it speaks to the idea that every little detail can be a piece of the puzzle, right? I mean, that's really what forensic science is all about.
Exactly. And, for years, law enforcement was really in the dark
Yeah.
about all this. Pun intended, I guess. They had all these crimes, rapes in Northern California and murders in the South, but they didn't realize that it was all the same guy.
It was all the same guy. Now, imagine you're living in Sacramento County in the mid-70s.
Right.
This is where the East Area Rapist, also called the E-er, started his spree.
Right.
Started with break-ins, escalated to sexual assault, and the community was just living in fear.
Absolutely, yeah.
There was this feeling that anybody could be next.
And it's really chilling how methodical and deliberate he was. I mean, some victims describe him whispering threats to them,
Oh, wow.
cleaning up crime scenes meticulously, even, stacking dishes on a sleeping husband's back
Wait, what?
before assaulting his wife.
Hold on. Stacking dishes, that's not just creepy, that's messed up on a whole other level.
Yeah.
Was that about asserting control, or was that something, more sinister?
It's a great question. Some profilers think that the Erie might have had some kind of military or law enforcement background.
Sure.
He knew how to use, zip ties and knots. And there were even rumors that he might have posed as a cop during one attack.
Oh, wow. That adds a whole nother layer of creepiness to this whole thing.
Absolutely.
So we've got this guy terrorizing communities. The police are scrambling for answers.
Yeah.
What really stands out to you about this early phase of his crimes?
I think for me, it's the psychological aspect of it.
Okay.
What made him escalate from, voyeurism and burglary to violent assault?
Right.
Was there some kind of trigger? Was this a slow, calculated descent into darkness?
Right. And he wasn't just a smash and grab kind of criminal.
Yeah.
He was meticulous, often disabled phone lines, meticulously planned entry and escape routes. He would even bring his own rope or cord.
Yeah.
It's almost like he was enjoying the fear he was creating.
It's very unsettling. It wasn't just about the crimes themselves. It was about the terror that he instilled in these entire communities.
Right.
He wasn't content with just breaking in. He wanted to make sure you knew that he was there,
Wow.
even if you never saw his face.
Okay, so the EER is wreaking havoc in Northern California. Then his crime spread south.
Yes.
This is where things get really dark.
They do. The attacks in Southern California took a much more violent turn. We see a clear shift from rape to murder.
And initially, the police didn't even connect the ER to the murders in Southern California.
Well, I know.
They were treating them as separate cases.
It happens.
Can you imagine, the frustration knowing this guy's out there potentially escalating, but not even realizing it's the same person?
Absolutely. It's a pretty common problem in serial crime investigations.
Yeah.
You got jurisdictional boundaries, different departments, lack of communication. It can all hinder the big picture.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't until this criminalist named Jim White, he had this gut feeling, this intuition that something was off.
He had a hunch.
He saw similarities in the MO, the way the crimes were carried out.
Yeah, this was, still the early days of DNA technology, but even then it was starting to become clear that it was the same perpetrator
Wow.
responsible for both the rapes and the murders.
So now you've got a statewide manhunt on your hands.
Absolutely.
Now, remember Michelle McNamara?
Yes.
Our writer-turned-detective. She actually had this personal encounter with a man
Right.
who she thought might be the Golden State Killer.
Yeah.
And this was years before the case was officially solved.
Right.
But she had this, nagging suspicion about this guy
Giant.
from her own childhood, and he lived near some of the early crime scenes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just some random hunch, right? She even compared his photo to one of the police sketches.
That's amazing.
It's like a light bulb moment, right?
Yeah.
Makes you realize that these monsters can be hiding in plain sight. They could be your neighbor,
Right.
your coworker, someone you went to school with.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a terrifying thought. It speaks to the power of Michelle's obsession.
It really does.
She wasn't just like reading about this case. She was living it, trying to connect the dots in a way that law enforcement hadn't at that point.
That's amazing.
It's almost like she was playing a real-life game of Clue. But before we dive deeper into her investigation and this whole Visalia ransacker connection,
Good.
I want to pause for a second and ask you, what stands out to you so far about this case? What's grabbing your attention?
I think for me, it's the shift from rape to murder.
Yeah.
Like what changed in this guy's psyche?
Right.
Was there some specific event that triggered it, or was it just a gradual escalation?
Right.
You know, understanding that transition could be key to unlocking his motives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and dive into that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've got this escalating pattern of violence, and now investigators are looking into the possibility that the EE was also responsible for a string of earlier burglaries.
Oh, really?
In Visalia, California.
Oh.
The work of the so-called Visalia ransacker. The Visalia ransacker. What's interesting is how the description of the Visalia ransacker kind of clashes with the image that we might have of a serial killer.
Yeah.
You know, witnesses describe him as having like a baby face and a really high-pitched voice.
Oh, wow.
Not exactly the menacing figure you'd expect.
No, not at all.
Right.
It's like the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing scenario.
Yeah, it really is.
Appearances can be deceiving, especially when you're dealing with someone as cunning as the Golden State Killer.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where we get one of the most like dramatic moments in the whole case.
Really?
A Visalia detective named McGowan actually came face-to-face with the ransacker during a stakeout.
What? Really? A face-to-face? That must have been terrifying.
Yeah, McGowan was chasing the ransacker through this residential neighborhood, and like as the ransacker turned to flee, he fired a shot at the detective.
Wow.
Luckily, McGowan wasn't hit,
Oh, my.
but the ransacker just vanished into the night.
Wow.
It's one of those moments where you realize how close they were to catching him, you know?
So close, yet so far.
Yeah.
But back then, they didn't have the tools that we have today. DNA technology was in its infancy.
Right.
So investigators relied heavily on eyewitness accounts, physical evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the tide was turning. You know, as DNA technology advanced, it became this huge game changer in the Golden State Killer investigation.
Absolutely.
And in countless other cases,
Yeah.
it allowed investigators to connect seemingly unrelated crimes.
Yeah.
And really build a stronger case against this perpetrator.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's amazing to think how far we've come with DNA analysis, right? I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, it was like science fiction.
Yeah, totally.
Now it's a routine part of criminal investigations.
Yeah.
And it was this new technology that really fueled Michelle McNamara's obsession, right? She saw its potential to finally crack the case.
And she was right to be optimistic.
Yeah.
DNA was the missing link. She was determined to use it to track down the Golden State Killer.
Yeah.
And she actually started collaborating with a bunch of like amateur and professional investigators online, sharing information and theories.
Wow.
Yeah, these early online forums dedicated to the case.
It's like the early days of like crowdsourced investigations.
Exactly.
People from all walks of life coming together to share their knowledge and their insights.
Yeah.
And speaking of insights, one of the key players in this whole story is Paul Holes, a criminalist from Contra Costa County.
Oh, yeah. Paul Holes was instrumental in this case.
He was.
He was a pioneer in using like cutting-edge DNA techniques.
Yeah.
Really championed this idea of familial DNA searching.
Yeah, can you explain that term for some of our listeners who might not know what that is?
Yeah, so familial DNA searching, it's basically a way to use DNA to find relatives of a suspect,
Oh.
even if the suspect's own DNA isn't in the database.
Okay.
So it's like casting a wider net.
Oh.
If you can't find the exact fish you're looking for, maybe you can find one of its close relatives.
I like that analogy. So it was this technique, along with, you know, good old-fashioned detective work, that led Paul Holes to a major breakthrough in the Golden State Killer case.
Huge breakthrough.
But even with these advancements,
Yeah.
there were still years of frustration
I know.
and dead ends.
Right.
Investigators chased down countless leads,
Yeah.
some more promising than others.
Right.
There was Joe Alsip.
Joe Alsip, right?
He was a friend of one of the victims,
Yeah.
and his minister actually claimed that he had confessed to the crimes.
Oh, wow. A minister's confession.
Yeah.
You can't get much more dramatic than that.
No, you can't.
What happened with that?
Well, it turns out the minister was a bit of an unreliable narrator,
Oh.
shall we say. He had a history of inserting himself into police
Oh,
investigations
wow.
and making these, like, outlandish claims.
Oh, no.
So the evidence against Alsip was pretty flimsy,
Okay.
and he was ultimately cleared.
Okay.
So another false lead.
Right.
But then there was Brett Glaspie. Yeah, this guy sounds like he was straight out of a true crime novel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was a young, charismatic guy
Okay.
from a wealthy family in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And he was known to, like, prowl around neighborhoods, peep into windows.
Yeah.
And he even confessed to, like, tying up and robbing a couple.
That's not good.
Sounds like he had a little bit of a dark side.
Yeah, okay.
And here's where it gets really weird.
Okay.
Glaspie was murdered in Mexico in 1982.
Oh, wow.
So if he was the Golden State Killer who
Yeah.
was responsible for the crimes committed after his death,
Right.
it's like a real-life whodunit within a whodunit.
Yeah, that's a twist.
Talk about a twist.
Yeah.
But Michelle McNamara had her own theory about a different suspect, Doug Fiedler,
Doug Fiedler.
who she found through her own research.
Okay.
She was convinced that Fiedler was the Golden State Killer.
She was sure.
He seemed to fit the profile. He was from California. He had a history of sexual offenses, and he lived near some of the crime scenes. But it must have been a crushing blow when DNA testing ruled him out.
Yeah, I bet. It highlights the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
These investigations can be, you get so invested in a theory only to have it crumble before your eyes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's a good reminder that even the most dedicated investigators have to stay objective and follow the evidence
Right.
wherever it leads.
Yeah.
And sometimes the evidence leads to unexpected places.
It does. Yeah.
Remember Paul Hole's theory about the Golden State Killer being a pilot?
Oh, yeah, that was an interesting one. Yeah, he based it on the geographic spread of the crimes,
Yeah.
especially some attacks that happened in different cities just hours apart.
Yeah.
Hard to pull that off without a car, let alone without some kind of air travel.
Right. And there were a few specific incidents that really fueled that theory.
Like what?
A cab driver in Modesto picked up a man from the airport who matched the Golden State Killer's description
Oh, wow.
around the time of an attack. And then in Davis, footprints led from a victim's house to the UC Davis airport.
Really?
Those are some pretty compelling coincidences.
Yeah, they are.
And there's that chilling detail from the book about the Golden State Killer telling one of his victims, "I hate you, Bonnie."
Oh, yeah.
And Holes thought it might be a reference to Bonnie Doon, a town near this small airport in Santa Cruz County.
Interesting.
It's all circumstantial, of course.
Right.
But, those little details can add up.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder if he wasn't a pilot himself, maybe he had some other connection to aviation.
Right.
Or the military.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And let's not forget that his first attack in the East Bay happened just a week after all branches of the military transferred their navigation training to Mather Air Force Base. And plus, the timing of some of these attacks seemed to align with the academic calendar at California State University, Sacramento.
Interesting.
Could he have been a student,
Yeah.
a military man,
Right.
someone connected to both?
Fascinating puzzle.
It is. And those strange homework pages found at one of the crime scenes just add to the mystery.
Oh, yeah, those were bizarre. One page seemed to be like a school assignment about General Custer,
Right.
but another was filled with this rambling rant about a teacher the writer hated.
Wow.
Yeah, and then there was this hand-drawn map on the back.
Right. The map.
It showed a residential area with, like, streets and cul-de-sacs,
Yeah.
a lake, a trail, and it seemed like a real place.
Yeah.
But investigators couldn't match it to any known location.
Oh, wow.
Almost like he was taunting them, dropping clues but making them impossible to decipher.
Right. Makes you think about his motives.
Yeah.
Was it all about power and control?
Right.
Was there a deeper psychological game that he was playing?
It's the question that has haunted investigators for decades, right?
Absolutely.
We can analyze his behavior,
Yeah.
try to piece together his patterns,
Right.
but ultimately we may never fully understand what drove him to commit these horrific acts.
Absolutely. But one thing's for sure. He was meticulous.
He was.
He clearly knew his way around houses,
Yeah.
often targeting homes that were, like, for sale
Right.
or under construction.
Exactly.
Remember those aerial photos and diagrams of neighborhoods he supposedly drew?
Yeah.
They suggest a level of spatial reasoning,
Right.
maybe even architectural knowledge.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like he was scouting his targets,
Yeah.
planning his moves with the precision of a military strategist.
Totally.
But even the most meticulous criminals make mistakes.
They do.
Remember the time the Golden State Killer was caught peeping into his girlfriend's window by her boyfriend Carl?
Oh, yeah, that was a close call.
Yeah. Carl confronted him. The Golden State Killer even fired his gun, but he managed to get away.
You did.
And then there was that time he was stopped by the police while driving a yellow Datsun just minutes after an attack.
Really?
Yeah, the police found his car full of suspicious items.
Oh, wow.
Rope, a ski mask, a flashlight.
Yeah.
But they didn't have enough to arrest him at the time. Oh, that's unbelievable.
Imagine the frustration those officers must have felt,
I know.
knowing they had him in their grasp, but they couldn't make the connection.
So frustrating.
It's one of the many what-ifs that plague this case.
Right.
But these close calls also show that the Golden State Killer wasn't some, mythical, infallible figure.
Right.
He made mistakes, and those mistakes would eventually lead to his downfall.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's mind-blowing how this guy managed to evade capture for so long.
It really is. But as we've seen, he wasn't a ghost.
No.
He was a human being, made mistakes, left fingerprints,
Right.
and ultimately his DNA told the tale.
His DNA told the tale. And it was that DNA analyzed using, these cutting-edge techniques that finally brought him down.
That's right.
Remember those familial DNA searches we talked about?
Yeah,
That's what cracked the case wide open.
it did.
Investigators were able to build a family tree,
Yeah.
tracing the Golden State Killer's lineage through distant relatives who had submitted their DNA to genealogy websites. I mean, it's like something out of a science fiction novel, right?
It really is.
But it just goes to show how far technology has come,
Yeah,
how it can be used to solve even the coldest of cases.
absolutely. And while Michelle McNamara didn't live to see the Golden State Killer's capture,
I know.
her work, her relentless pursuit of the truth, it played a crucial role in keeping this case alive
Absolutely.
in the public consciousness.
Absolutely.
Her book, it really helped to humanize the victims,
Yeah.
put pressure on law enforcement to never give up.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times,
Right.
hope and perseverance can prevail.
It can.
And it's a testament to the importance of collaboration between law enforcement, forensic scientists, and, everyday citizens.
Right.
This case was solved because people refused to let it fade into obscurity.
Yeah.
They shared information, they analyzed clues,
Yep.
they never stopped believing that justice would be served.
Exactly.
So what do you think now that we've reached the end of our deep dive? How will the Golden State Killer case be remembered?
I think it'll be remembered as a chilling reminder of the darkness
Yeah.
that can exist in seemingly ordinary people.
Yeah.
But it's also a story of resilience.
Right.
The human spirit's ability to, overcome trauma, fight for justice.
Absolutely.
And it's a testament to the power of technology,
Right.
collaboration, in solving even the most complex and haunting of crimes.
Well said. And for those of you listening who are intrigued by this case, want to learn more,
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking out Michelle McNamara's book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
It's a great read.
It really is. It's gripping, insightful, and ultimately hopeful.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating case to explore.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.